Okay, so as promised, I'm doing my 2019 end of year top 10 pound for pound rankings. So a couple of notable mentions first and foremost, who didn't quite make it for me. Josh Taylor, obviously become unified with Regis Prograis a couple of months ago. Was actually at that fight and unfortunately had to leave early because the trains all got cancelled. So gutted I actually missed that. Would have been pretty much ringside for that, but not going to dwell too much on that. So yeah, Josh Taylor, probably around 15, 16, something like that. I haven't gone back that far, but I would imagine roughly that's where I'd put him, but not quite top 10 yet. We'll see if he potentially goes for Undisputed in 2020, and then we can take it from there. But also notable, Miguel Berchelt, close, would have had him there if he had fought Leo Santa Cruz, but on the basis that he hasn't, for me, he just misses out. So another very close one, probably around number 11, something like that, number 12. Another one that just misses out for me is Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia was a consensus top 5, top 4 pound for pounder this time last year. However, he jumped up to 147 to get a beatdown put on him by Errol Spence. He now appears to be staying at 147 to fight Jesse Vargas at a weight he clearly has no business being anywhere near. I think it's worth mentioning that I think Mikey Garcia is only around 5'5". So what business he has at 147, I have no idea. He's really natural 130, 135. So obviously when we're talking about 135/140, you have a tangible argument to say he is in the top 10, if not top 5 pound for pound. But given that he now seems to be chasing the money fights at 147 and abandoning really his legacy he had at 135 and 140, I don't really think there is... Yeah, I don't really think there's much more to say. I mean, I don't think you can put him top 10 pound for pound anymore, just on the basis that we don't really know where Mikey Garcia's at. So on that, yeah, just misses out as well. Gennady Golovkin is another one. Has not had the best 2019, it has to be said. Didn't look overly impressive against Steve Rolls. And then obviously had that really, really tough fight against Sergey Derevchenko. Derevchenko is a very good fighter. I do like Derevchenko, but he made Golovkin look old, he made Golovkin look slow, and he made Golovkin look vulnerable. And I think the consensus is it's no longer just a Izzy, it is a Golovkin is there for the taking now. So, for me, I can't rank him top 5 or top 10 anymore based on the fact that I think it's more than likely that Golovkin is going to get beaten once, if not twice next year. I think that's pretty much accepted. So when we're now at a point where accepting a fighter is done, are we to rank him still? If you do, based on resume, then obviously he's still top 7 or so, but I'm not sure at this stage Golovkin is that serviceable. I'll stand to be corrected, but we'll see. Now, starting with number 10, we have Leo Santa Cruz. Obviously, Leo Santa Cruz is no worse than top 2, top 3 in his division consensusly. However, he has got the wins over Abner Mares and Carl Frampton in that rematch. Now, obviously, I know that these aren't necessarily recent wins, but they are the most notable wins at Super Feather. That has to be said. So really, that's why he's in my top 10. Leo Santa Cruz, if he unified with Berchelt, and I think the winner of that would definitely be top 10. But the fact that hasn't happened yet, and the fact that doesn't seem to be it doesn't look like it's gonna happen for me, is the reason that I have to go with Leo Santa Cruz. I understand he hasn't had the best 2019, fought a low level of competition, and sort of one where he's been expected to win. However, it is the Abner Mares and the Carl Frampton rematch that really stick out to me as the reasoning for him sort of hanging around in this top 10. Now, at number 9, I have Juan Francisco Estrada. Again, his 2019 has been good. He avenged that loss to Rungvisai. And for me, that is... I mean, it means he becomes the man of the division, doesn't it? He is now consensus the man. I believe he holds the ring belt as well. So he really is the number 1 in his division. For that alone, he has to be top 10, doesn't he? Really. To be top 10 in what is a division of killers, Superfly. I expect at some point, will Yafai be thrown in with him? Probably, but Yafai will get eaten if he does. So I expect that to possibly happen next year, and if that does happen, then I think there can be no doubt that he deserves to be top 10. Moving on, Number 8, I have Errol Spence Jr. Again, might be controversial because I have got someone in the same division as him, or a couple of people actually who are higher, who I believe that Spence could or probably would beat. However, it is based on resume and what have you done for me lately, as well as what have you done for me historically. So, Mikey Garcia this year and Sean Porter. Now, Mikey Garcia, as I say, is a natural 135 guy. No business up at 1547, so really, as good as Mikey Garcia is, the fact that Errol Spence could comfortably weigh in... I mean, Errol Spence could weigh middleweight, if not super middle, and not be that undersized. You know, there are smaller super middleweights than Errol Spence, and he's fighting a guy that, as I say, is a blown up 130, 135 pounder. So, for me, I don't think that necessarily is a fantastic win. However, the Sean Porter win is. The Sean Porter win is what has put in no doubt he's top 10. Absolutely no doubt. Obviously, he also did beat Kell Brook. They are the 2 elite level wins, Kell Brook and Sean Porter. However, Kell Brook was damaged goods, and Kell Brook, despite being the champion, wasn't the favourite going into that. So we have to sort of say is his first real tough test, recently anyway, has been the Sean Porter fight, and he won a split decision there, unifying and picking up the WBC belt in the process. So he is now the unified, and consensus no worse than top 2 in his division, top 3. However, I have got 2 people in his division that ranked above him, as I'm about to go on to, and I will justify that as we go on. So yeah, Errol Spence, number 8. What is going on with Errol Spence? I can see 2020 being a very slow year for him, probably a rehabilitation year. So we'll see what goes on with Errol Spence, but for the time being, still comfortable top 10 pound for pound for me. At number 7, I have none other than Naoya Inoue, picking up the IBF title to unify against Nonito Donaire. Now, that obviously was one of the performances of the year, one of the fights of the year. A really, really good performance. Earlier on in 2019, he beat Emmanuel Rodriguez, who was previously unbeaten, absolutely smashing him to bits for a brutal KO there. Now, for me, Inoue, you've got to have him top 10, haven't you? A lot of people have him top 4. Not sure he's done enough for me to be top 4 yet. But still, I am very, very impressed with Inoue. If you've got him, you know, I'm not going to complain if you have you have him higher in these rankings. In fact, as I'm going through my rankings, I almost am making I could put him in number 5. So really, the next few people are interchangeable. So don't take this as set in stone. So Inoue here, obviously, he up at bantam has beaten McDonnell, Payano, Rodriguez, and Donaire. The McDonnell performance, I believe that was for the WBA regular title, and he held on to the regular belt until 2019 when he became a full world champion when he beat Rodriguez for the IBF title to unify. So, to pick that up to unify, yeah. So he is now technically a unified champion. If I'm not mistaken as well, he has picked up from Donaire the full WBA title. So he is now a proper, fully fledged unified champion. I'd like to see him clean up the division, to be honest with you, in 2020. And that would definitely make him probably a top 3, top 4 pound for pounder with absolutely no doubt about it. But for the time being, I still think he's definitely in the top 7, no worse. Based on obviously what he's been doing lately. He has been running through people with the exception of Donaire. And that Donaire was a game Donaire. That was a big Donaire as well. One thing I think the Donaire performance did highlight is that this isn't another Manny Pacquiao. I know the comparisons have been made, but we're not going to be able to see Inoue jump up the weights, particularly, because he's already starting to look... I mean, Donaire made him look a bit ragged at times, and I feel like if you stepped up to, say, Super Bantam, he would start stretching it a bit. This isn't going to be a guy that makes it all the way up to 140 or anything like that. I know that it might sound daft to say that, but obviously the comparisons have been made between himself and Pacquiao and the way that he's been able to just jump up from fly, and I don't think that it's going to be the same with Inoue, unfortunately. I think we're starting to see him pretty much max out. He might be able to go up to Super Bantam, but I don't foresee him getting anywhere close to feather or anything like that. Moving on to number 6, I have Manny Pacquiao. Now, a bit of a controversial one. I don't think Manny Pacquiao is the best person in his division, necessarily. However, his resume is astounding. Probably the best resume of anybody in this list. with the exception, I don't know, actually, maybe with the exception of one. I don't know. I think Pacquiao's probably the best in his list. I mean, his resume is incredible, and he beat an unbeaten, high-level world champion, let's be honest, in Keith Thurman. Yes, Keith Thurman was coming off a layoff, but look, Thurman is a legit world champion, is a legit world-level fighter, and at 41, Manny Pacquiao managed to beat him. So look, let's give him his props as well. Of course, first month of this year, he also beat Adrian Broner. Yeah, I mean, what does a win over Broner mean at this point? But for me, the justification for Pacquiao being number 6 is, I mean, even in his losses, I mean, if we're talking over the last few fights, we've got Keith Thurman, Adrian Broner, what was it, Matisse, Horn, Timothy Bradley, didn't he? Oh, and Jesse Vargas was in there as well. Obviously, then the loss to Mayweather. I think he beat Algieri, didn't he, when he was unbeaten? And then beat Bradley as well. If I'm right, I think. I mean, come on, that is an incredible... I mean, I think they're his most recent fights. Correct me if I've missed anything. But to be completely honest with you, I mean, come on. Bradley, Mayweather, Algieri, Vargas, Matisse, Thurman... That is... Come on. That's not a bad resume at all. So for me, I mean, that is a better resume than Inoue. Let's be honest, that is a better resume than Spence. So for me, that's the justification for having Pacquiao above those guys. I understand. Obviously, Spence would be a big favourite, and I do think that fight will happen, and I would make Spence a big favourite. Obviously, a lot younger. A lot faster, hungrier possibly at this stage, but I still think you've got to give it to Manny Pacquiao to be doing what he's doing at this age. He's a serviceable, no worse than top 3 in his division, as a world champion in his 40s. Let's give Pacquiao his props. Now, number 5, I have Artur Beterbiev. Artur Beterbiev, I mean, he's had a decent 2019. For me, he fought Kalasic, didn't he? And, I mean, that wasn't a particularly high-level fight again, but did what he had to do, knocked him out. Back in the last year, fought Callum Johnson as well, got dropped in that fight and showed that he has a bit of willpower in him to come back and stop Callum Johnson. But obviously, the fight we're all thinking about here is the Gvozdyk fight, which I stayed up to watch and was a fantastic fight. And it makes you appreciate what we have here in Artur Beterbiev. Now, Artur Beterbiev at times was being outboxed by Gvozdyk. Gvozdyk is obviously a very slick boxer, quite a nervous boxer. It has to be said, he sort of fights with nervous energy. He's quite a sort of shaky, back foot, slick, dark. But that being said, Beterbiev just imposed himself on Gvozdyk and didn't care that if he was getting outboxed. He just went to steamroll him and did. I mean, I don't think anyone really has much business with Beterbiev up at 175, with the exception of maybe Bivol. I'd like to see the Bivol fight. I think that would be a good fight. But for me, Beterbiev is definitely the man in the division, and I think the consensus man now as well, especially now he's unified after beating Gvozdyk. So for me, you've got to say he's the man of what is considered probably the toughest division in boxing, probably the most stacked division. In terms of world-level fighters, I think the heavyweight division has 20 fighters all that could potentially beat each other, whereas light heavy has sort of 5 or 6 that it's a toss-up. But Beterbiev is the best of all of the bunch of those at the moment, I'd say consensusly. So for me, Beterbiev has to be top 5, pound for pound. Moving on. Number 4, I have Terence Crawford. Not the best 2019 for Terence Crawford, it has to be said. Beating a shot to bits Amir Khan didn't really prove a whole lot. And then struggling massively in his last fight, as we saw, should have counted as a knockdown. So for me, Crawford, he was my number 1 going back a couple of years ago, but now I'm not so sure. Especially as we don't really know where Crawford's at, because Top Rank can't get him the opponents as a good measuring stick. We don't know. Is he starting to slip? Potentially. He does seem to be slowing down, for my money anyway. Crawford does seem to be slowing down. He's never had the best defense. And you do wonder that if and when eventually this fight with Spence does come round, will he be a bit too long in the tooth? Look, I do like Terence Crawford. I really do. I think he's a fantastic fighter. You can't have him any worse than number 4, can you? But for me, he has slipped a little bit just because he's not fighting the people we want him to see. Obviously, there is the whole cross the road stuff with PBC. It's not saying it's his fault necessarily that he's not fighting these guys, but unfortunately, his contemporaries are. So, on that basis alone, we're going to have to start, I'm afraid, dropping him back from the rankings, and that's why he is only at number 4. Moving up to number 3, I have Vasyl Lomachenko. Obviously, this year has been a good year. I think it's fair to say not a great year for Lomachenko. Just the 2 fights this year against Anthony Crolla and Luke Campbell. Now, Anthony Crolla, as we know, is sort of a fringe European level fighter, sort of masquerading as a world level fighter. Due to quite clever matchmaking, I think Anthony Crolla has been made to look a lot better than he actually is. I've never been particularly sold on Crolla. His final farewell performance was he didn't win that, did he? Let's be honest. So anyway, he beat Crolla decidedly, which is what we expected. And then he fought Luke Campbell, who is a viable world level contender. Let's be fair. The Campbell fight really was a good fight, and really was a good performance by Loma. He did get made to look at times a little bit ordinary, but let's be honest, the size difference between Luke Campbell and Vasyl Lomachenko is vast. Not just in terms of height and reach, but in terms of body mass as well. You can really make an argument at this point. Lomachenko has no business being up at lightweight, because he really doesn't. I mean, he turned pro at featherweight, didn't he? And he was not the biggest featherweight. So for me, I think Lomachenko's starting to max out. We're starting to see his abilities stretched a little bit, because obviously skill set only takes you so far before size does start to be a problem. I still think at lightweight there's no one better. And I don't think there's anyone really below him that's going to be challenging him coming up or anything like that. If he jumps up to super light, it's a different ballgame completely, but I don't expect him to do that. I think if he jumped up to 140, then I don't know. I think he would seriously struggle. I think there are some people out there that are not as technically good at him as him, anywhere near, in fact, but could pose some problems. So I think if he stays at 135 and carries on trying to pick up belts, then I see no reason why he wouldn't either move up or continue to stay in the top 3 consensus pound for pound. Moving on to number 2, I have Alexander Usyk. Now, Alexander Usyk might be a slightly controversial one. Has not had the best 2019, was injured for most of it, and was due to fight Tyrone Spong. Ended up fighting Chaz Witherspoon instead in a bit of a knockover job. My basis for Usyk is we are talking about someone that in 16 fights pretty much solidified his legacy as no worse than the top 2, put in a lot of people's minds the best cruiserweight of all time. He fought Tony Bellew in the UK. He fought Gassiev in Russia. He fought Bradis in Latvia. He fought Hook in Germany. He fought Hunter in America. He fought Glowacki in Poland. I mean, come on. I don't know what else I need to say. I think just that. Who else has done anything like that? And that's why I'm not sure if I will be able to get it out today, but I'm going to be doing a top 10 top 10 heavyweight rankings. For me, I actually have Usyk number 1. Yeah. Because, I'm sorry, the champions are all dancing around at the moment. You've got the lineal inverted commas in Fury, you've got the unified in Joshua, and then you've got the WBC in Wilder. Sort of all prancing about a bit, but I mean, this man didn't fuck about, went and fought the champions in their backyards, each of them, put a beating on each of them, and then moved up to the heavyweight. Nah. No one's done anything like that up at heavyweight. Just no one's even got close to that heavyweight. No one's even Joshua, who's unified, is literally hidden in his home country. Come over to the US, got spanked, and then fucked off over to Saudi Arabia. And I'm an AJ fan, so let's not compare Usyk and any of the heavyweight champions, please. This guy's in a bit of a league of his own. And I think Wilder's only fought out of the US once, if I'm not mistaken, when he was a prospect up against, oh God, who was it? Audley Harrison, wasn't it? And he just smashed it Harrison to bits. So no, Usyk has been there, seen it, done it. Might not have had the best 2019, but I mean, come on, that resume. In terms of where he went and did it, he's got the best resume on this whole list. If we're basing it on what he was up against. A lot of people have fought potentially harder fights, but this guy would go to their backyards and steal the title from them. That has to be respected. So, number 2 for me. Number 1, Canelo Alvarez. A good 2019, a very good 2019 in fact, beating Daniel Jacobs for the unified middleweight title. He picked up in the process the WBC, the WBA and the IBF title. I mean, that was a fantastic performance, put a bit of a beating on Jacobs. It ended up being a unanimous decision, wasn't even close, was it? A fantastic performance by Canelo. Moving on, he then jumped all the way up to 175 to knock out Sergey Kovalev. Yeah, it's not the Kovalev of old. Yeah, it's a vulnerable Kovalev. Yeah, it's a Kovalev that almost very nearly got taken out by Anthony Yarde. But still, that was a serviceable Kovalev. That Kovalev still would have given most light heavyweights a few problems. In fact, that Kovalev had just beaten Alida Alvarez. So let's give Canelo his due and say, look, he is chasing a legacy now, isn't he? He's not just doing it for the titles. The titles mean nothing to Canelo anyway, because I mean he's a money man. So it's not the titles bring the money, Canelo brings the money. But even so, he's jumping up through the weights. He's just showing that he can do it. And to me, I mean, come on. I mean, let's look through this resume. Who's he got now? He's got Kovalev, Jacobs this year. He had that gimme against Fielding, didn't he? Golovkin twice, obviously, and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I think they were most of his recent fights. I mean, what are they? How many fights are they? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Something like that. There is last. I haven't counted in my head. Probably his last 5 or 6 fights. I mean, that's a scary resume, isn't it? That's up there, as I say, resume up there with Pacquiao. It's between Pacquiao and him, and who's got the best resume. Probably Pacquiao just. But in terms of where people have been, probably Usyk takes it. But I mean, even so, I mean, I know he's fighting them all in the US, and I guess you can say it's a little bit of a comfortable place for him, and obviously he gets the rub of the green with the judges. But all that aside, I mean, come on, I mean, who is doing what Canelo is doing at the moment? No one. So for me, look, he's number 1 pound for pound. I don't see that changing. I think we really need to appreciate what we've got with Canelo. Yes, there have been things like Canelo weight and rehydration clauses and all this shit that we don't really like. And obviously the clenbuterol. And look, there is a lot of controversy. And the scoring. And look, there's a lot of controversy with Canelo Alvarez. But let's just appreciate what we've got, which is just a hell of a fighter. Built like a ball. He is offensively phenomenal. Defensively sublime. I mean, he's probably been, if the decade started in 2015, he's the best of the decade. But unfortunately, I think because Floyd beat him and Floyd exists, I think unfortunately Floyd would have to be the fighter of the decade. But look, this guy's no worse than number 2. So let's give Alvarez his props here. Look, Canelo Alvarez is number 1 pound for pound. Simple as that. So let me know what you think of the rankings. Sorry this has been quite a long one. I'll get this wrapped up now, but let me know what you think and take care.